Hello, and welcome to Movies We Dig, podcast about film, antiquity, and everything in between. I'm Elijah Fleming.
And I'm Colin McCormick.
And today we're going to finish our discussion of The Blood of Zeus, the Netflix animated series, created by Charlie and Blas Parlopanides and produced by Powerhouse Animation Studios. And once again, we are back with our wonderful guests, Zoe Thomas and Christy Vogler. So excited to have you guys here again.
I'm so happy to be back to finish this, because more thoughts, so many more thoughts.
Yeah, thanks for, inviting us back. We didn't scare you away too bad last
thanks for coming back.
Oh,
have you? It's the episode's up, but it's only been up for like a day now, so I don't know if you've listened to it yet.
I listened to it. I've decided I'm narcissistic. I love listening to myself talk, even though I was there for the entire conversation. I don't know what it is. I'm totally okay with it.
I was terrified that I'd go back and listen to my opinions and then be like, but you're wrong, Zoe. Like, disagree with myself. And I was like, I can't have that crisis of self yet. I'm not ready for that.
Just wait until you get yourself published, and then you have to look at it in writing.
Oh, did you guys, by the way, after it posted on Twitter, I got followed by the official page of Blood of Zeus. I'm like,
We're famous now.
Yeah, this is the best. I hope they're listening to our critiques.
It is run by the Parlopanides brothers, so maybe they're listening in, and hopefully we don't, they don't unfollow us after this. Because I think we do generally dig the show, right?
Yes.
We should start with Lige, because she
Yeah.
Okay, I very much dig the second half more than the first half. And I think that maybe that was sort of the fault of our breaking it into two, because I feel like if I had just like binge watched the whole thing like a really long movie, I would have felt differently about it. But like stopping right at like after all of the exposition and like all of the backstory, I was like, well, what? But the second half is where all of the actual story happens, and that part I really enjoyed. And I think some of the themes that we kind of talked about, like anger and some of like what in the world is Zeus gonna do now, really do come back, and I could really see that pull through. And so I think I definitely dig the show more after watching the second half. I think it's stronger in the second half.
Absolutely. I concur. Not that anyone asked me, but I would say that I dig the last. Well, no,
we are asking you.
This is what you're here, Zoe.
I didn't mean like, yes. I'm the final arbiter of our opinion on this. I dig the last 4 episodes. Unequivocal. Well, I mean, of course, I have thoughts and comments, but like, I have almost unequivocally. Let's just not say that word.
Oh no! Remember, you're being recorded, so think real hard about that word.
Yeah, I don't. I'm gonna stop now.
Yeah, I think. I mean, this is where the animators are at their best too, right? Like it's all the action sequence. It's literally the Gigantomachy Part 2, like the remix. You're like, all right, let's hash this out again and see how it goes. Except now we have some gods on opposite sides. And again, I really wish Dionysus had just brought the Maenads to the whole thing, because that could have been a really fun fight to see between demons and Maenads to see who wins that. Yeah, I definitely, after our conversation last week, was paying attention to some of the quieter moments. Like, absolutely loved the fight, the battle. But there are still some moments that I'm just like, it frustrates me, especially in how the women are being treated. I also have like multiple questions I'm going to save for the end. My number one question, though, is like, who is Who is Apollo sleeping with in that one quick cutscene? They look like twins, and then it's
those
guy
twins from Castlevania.
But like, then you see the guy a lot. He's in like a lavender lilac robe, and I'm like, who is that? I need to know what god that is. And I've come to, maybe it's Eros and Psyche who have a weird kink with Apollo. I don't know. That was the closest I got to of like, who would wear a lavender lilac robe who still kind of reads as masculine, and that's not Dionysus. And that was my best guess. So many questions, few answers.
My thought was like, maybe it's one of his, because he does have like young male lovers, like trying to remember their names though. Hyacinthus.
Yeah, that's possible.
But they all die. That's kind of the thing with them, is like they tend to be on the receiving end of a javelin or something. But that guess is the best, because I was just gonna guess like it's some kind of nymph or something.
I just thought they were like some randos that Apollo brought home that night.
Same, right?
I got very into like, who are all of these other people just hanging out on Olympus? I need to know. And like, you can figure some of them out, but not all of them.
Yeah, because I feel like this is the kind of show, like, yeah, there are some generic gods and goddesses that are just kind of in the background, but like, this is the kind of show that you sort of feel like the choices tend to be very deliberate, and they definitely like do their homework, so to speak.
Yeah. I did also, I put on subtitles, I think like you guys suggested, to sort of hear the background people talking. And that was really satisfying to sort of just hear the things that like people whisper, like especially when Huron just gets to Olympus. Everybody's like talking about Zeus and they're like, he can't keep it in his pants.
Yeah. It's very like, it's all the background dialogue. I think it's like, this is a question kind of like to 2 points of what Eli was talking about. One is like the way we watch shows today and the way we can watch a show like this, because I think that definitely affects the way we view it. Like, you know, when it comes out in an 8-episode package versus like in, you know, if it was on network or cable or something like that, and it would come out in week-long installments. And I think that definitely affects the way we would view this, which I want to talk about particularly with regards to the last episode. But then like subtitles is another one of those things where like putting on the subtitles really for me draws into sharp contrast to like how on the nose the background dialogue is so often, where it's like somebody's like, Hera's going to be so mad because this is like another one of Zeus's bastards. He can't do that. It's like a thing that like nobody would just like this is a thing that presumably all the gods would just know. No one would like say it out loud in like such an expository manner.
They wouldn't have to whisper it to each other.
I was going to say it's very on the nose that we did the second half today because tomorrow's Father's Day, and one of the biggest things with Zeus is like
Is that,
am I right?
Everyone who's like looking at their phone is like, hang on.
Okay, my mom lied to me then. I'm sorry.
Father's Day is the 20th.
Okay.
It's like, how dare you?
It comes out right before Father's Day. Let's say
yes,
that.
it will. We will come out right before Father's Day. Okay. Thanks, Christy, for instilling a small panic in all of your co-panelists.
My mom lied to me then. I'm sorry. We can blame my mom.
She did it so you would get your dad a gift now.
You're right, yeah.
Or call him. Oh, we're very like call people on the Hallmark holidays sort of thing.
Yeah, Hallmark holidays. Sorry, you were saying.
So the first part we talked about how Zeus is kind of that past the heroic aspect. He's grappling with like, what is my actual place in the world? And then here he's kind of, I think it's really interesting. I do like that Zeus is trying to atone and be accountable for his past actions. And maybe you can argue it's too little too late in a lot of ways, but one of my favorite moments is the discussion he has with Hephaestus, where Hephaestus calls him out saying like, yeah, you're a shitty dad and be better. You like the world's at stake. You need to do better than you're doing right now. And I kind of love that it's Hephaestus who's calling him out. Yeah, because he's one of the few legitimate children of Hera and Zeus. And I also love the way that he's not a hot god, which he's not supposed to be. He's not necessarily like completely unattractive or like he's not ugly how we might think of him, but you're definitely is like, yeah, compared to everyone else. Yeah.
And of all people, Hephaestus would know how shitty Zeus can be because Zeus is the one who threw him off Olympus for basically being ugly, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I liked that.
Or also interesting. It's interesting if they don't explicitly have Athena, but I think she actually does show up in the Gigantomachy 2 Electric Boogaloo scene because she gets like sucked into one of the giants along with Zeus.
That's my favorite. And we'll talk about the giants later, but that one's my favorite of them.
the Vor giant.
It's the it's the Spaceballs giant who just like sucks up all the.
But if you think about like parthenogenesis or I guess not parthenogenesis, autogenesis.
A guy making a child himself or something, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Of, Athena, being born from Zeus's head, and the other story of Hephaestus being that Hera tried to have her own child without Zeus and had this unfortunate god who doesn't measure up to the beauty standards and physical standards that the gods have. And so obviously that's not explored in this show, but also if you think about it from that sense, it's even more striking that A, Hephaestus calls out Zeus, and that B, Hephaestus doesn't choose Hera.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. I liked their conversation, and I liked that there was a training montage, and they had sort of like, I love a training montage. It needs to happen. If there's going to be growth, we need a training montage. Um, but I do think that like their little like father son therapy session, like Zeus's apology was very like self focused. He was like I and me and my failings, and it's like there was very little about Heron at all, and so that I was kind of like, come on, man, like work with the kid a little bit more. But at least
So
at least there was some accountability that he was trying to take. He did at some point say, all of this is my fault.
yes.
Right.
And he admitted to Hera that he was like a terrible husband. He never gets the chance to go tell the mortal woman that he forced himself on. Like, yeah, that was maybe a shitty thing to do, but you're dead, so sorry.
And my reading a little bit even is because Heron, as I'm sort of thinking, like we talked a little bit last week about how Heron is kind of very like archetypical, or like he's like the every hero. He's almost like a synthesis of like all Greek heroes, or like particularly he's very Perseus and Heracles-esque, or maybe even very Theseus-esque. And then in a sense, like maybe this is maybe a generous reading, but of like you could read like Zeus's apology to Heron as like almost like a stand-in for like Zeus's basically to like it's kind of addressing all of his maybe this is maybe you guys like you're just gonna be like nah, but like it's like Heron is almost like a stand-in for like every Greek hero ever, which is maybe why his character is kind of so broadly drawn, and then like I don't know, maybe why his name is basically hero.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that was my thing is it was interesting, and I don't necessarily find it problematic of like this question of men who are in power holding themselves accountable. Like that is kind of a big thing coming out of the Me Too movement and things like that. And so I'm not opposed to that. But then they did something else in the show that just made me so angry, where we get the reveal of Seraphim's story of like Zeus shows up and is like, well, actually, this is how it happened. And it's literally a he said, she said, with like one motivation being blackmail and the other motivation to believe him to be a bribe. And I'm like, that looks so bad. And I know that there's more to the characters of Hera being manipulative, but Zeus is also shown to be a liar all the time. So
gaslighter.
Yeah. And I really hate that moment actually of you're very much presented with these two versions of the story. They don't necessarily say which one is true or not, but it's like you literally put a he said, she said moment in there, and we are inclined, we're more sympathetic to Zeus and believing Zeus's version of what happened.
Yeah. I didn't see it quite like that, but that is, when you say it, I can't get that out of my head now.
When we were watching it, I was watching it with Tracy again, and she said, well, how's Seraphim supposed to know which one's the true story? And then, like, I think the way the text is sort of presented is because Zeus says the thing where he's like, I'm going to give you what you want free of charge, and that's, like, my proof that I'm... And then, like, I think, like, we're supposed to infer the audience that his is the true story for all the reasons that Christy just outlined. But I think you're right. It is, like, very much, like, it's kind of it's a hearsay, or, like... we never really get the final word. We're just gonna have to take Zeus at his word, which we should never do.
No.
Never. I also think what struck me was sort of the difference in how Zeus treated Hieron and then Seraphim, and that he was like having this father bonding, release your anger, like we're gonna go through this little therapy training montage, and then he just like Seraphim's not his actually biological child, but he obviously felt some sliver of responsibility for him, and he just like Seraphim doesn't get to have the therapy apology moment. He's just like, go. He doesn't get to release his anger.
Well, his foil scene, he kind of does, but because he finds Acrisius, and then whereas Heron is sort of has a kind of like a breakthrough, so to speak, or like coming to terms with his anger, Seraphim just kind of relapses into his anger and just kills Acrisius, and then basically just doubles down on everything he's doing. And I guess like I think the idea being with Seraphim is, it's like the cup that he's never gonna fill or whatever.
Yeah, but I feel
it's always like
Zeus doesn't like give him the chance.
Right.
No.
Well, and Zeus makes a big deal about, Heron's like, well, why don't you just kill Seraphim? And Zeus is like, well, he and you are the only things left of your mother in this world. But then he doesn't, and then he said, potentially lying or not, I helped keep you alive. Like all of that was me. I did all of this. I'm so great. But he doesn't, after that point, he doesn't warn Seraphim away from the giant and the OG, Seraphim's running away from being hunted, and then finds the giant. Like, Zeus never intervenes at any of the really critical moments.
Yeah.
After sort of the bear attack. It's hard for me. It's probably a good takeaway. It's hard for me to trust Zeus.
Yep.
Well, the other problematic storyline that comes out of that it's Electra's love for Zeus is what changes him. And like, that's also a really dangerous message to put out there, that it's like, oh, I can be the one to change how this man has been acting, this more like male deity has been acting for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And they present it that way. And it's like, that's also really dangerous of an idea to present.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or even if it wasn't Electra, that it was his kids. Like the act of having Heron, for the first time, he's like, I've never been a father really until now. And it's like, you have so many children on Olympus.
Yeah.
Like, that's not, don't put that on Heron. It's not Heron's job to be the dutiful son for you. Like,
I did see that again being kind of a parallel to the Iliad, with Zeus trying to decide if he's going to interfere with the death of Sarpedon. Yeah.
Sarpedon. Yeah.
And this time he was like, oh, this might be a good segue into the Fates, but just like all of a sudden there's this moment and it's like, oh, Hermes, you showed up. Well, obviously the Fates want me to interfere in this moment. And I was like, ooh, an Aphrodite interfering moment. And like, it's like, nope, next level, Zeus is just going to overdo it a little bit. But yeah, how we very clearly in one scene see the Fates summoning someone to tell him, it's like, hey, just so you know, these are your decisions coming up, versus Zeus is like, obviously this is what the Fates want, even though there's no creepy spider on my hand right now.
Yeah.
That is a good segue, though.
Fates. They were so cool.
They are so good.
Oh, I love their radioactive spiders. Yes.
The old, young, middle thing, or what I like to call the bogus Bunsen beans phenomenon, where you have a series of three people in one, and they're like differentiated by either old, young, and like middle, or they're short, fat, and lean, or what is it, like one short, one fat, one lean? That's the bogus Bunsen bean, right?
Yeah.
But like, I was thinking about this. Is that from like in, I think like Slavic mythology, there's three women who like prophesize, and they're like dawn, what is it, evening, night, dawn, or like dawn and dusk and night or something like that.
Hecate is also a threefold goddess.
I'm thinking of American gods, right? Like there's like Mrs. Midnight or something along those lines.
But the idea, but they also have like prophetic abilities, and one is like, one's kind of, there's like a young one and a middle one and an older one, which I feel like, because like that's not necessarily a thing with the Fates. So they're usually all just,
they have distinct roles in spinning,
measuring and cutting. I think.
So it's Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos are the Fates. I'm trying to do
like Disney's Hercules is also more almost, but they combine like the Gray and the Moirai in that case. So they
with the eye and the
yeah.
But anyway, but that's all just to say, like, I think that the old, young, middle thing, I think that might be borrowed probably from American gods, truth be told, which is how I, like Eli, how I know about the Slavic women. But yeah, the way they, it turns into this whole debate about like fate and free will, and they give the whole explanation about the baby and the table.
Which is by far...
Which doesn't make any sense
really,
to me.
I kind of like it, because what their ability isn't necessarily to choose fate, it's just like they have foresight. And then it's like, I kind of get that. Like but it's interesting, because then they're also really powerful. Like that's the thing that's always existed in Greek myth, is like Zeus is almighty, but he must bow to the Fates. And it was kind of here the case that the Fates are kind of like, well, all we really have is foresight. Like we can see how things are going to turn out. And it's like, well, that's Prometheus's ability, which, Zeus was also terrified of Prometheus. So maybe that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like, do they dictate? Because that's kind of that's the way it seems like it gets talked about in a lot of ancient myth and literature, is that the Fates are the ones who kind of dictate fate. I mean, this is all of like Greek prophecy and like the idea about fate, but there's a very like have your cake and eat it too, because no matter what happens, it's always like, yeah, this is what the Fates predicted.
Yeah.
So like we never really know.
Like if they had showed the baby changing course or something on the table, it's like, see, you like we foresee this is what is most likely to happen, but like you can still choose to stop and chew on your foot instead, I guess. That's whatever babies do on a table.
Yeah, I think I am just at my heart not a philosophy person. And so the whole idea of fate versus free will makes my brain go crunch. So but their character designs, and I mean even if sort of the young old or young middle-aged old sort of progression isn't from Greek myth originally, it works so well.
Yeah.
And I love when they walk down towards the Thalos temple where they live, the cypress trees.
Yeah,
they
growing and then dying and growing and dying was like, I just really liked the whole aesthetic of them.
Yes.
And that feeds in because it's like, it's like a birth, life, death movies or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
To reference a great sort of movie critique blog that everyone should go to.
And I also, I mean, even though that one of them is younger, two of them are younger than the eldest, which is, I guess, how time works. If you look at their clothing, one thing I find really, because I'm fascinated by the character design of them, is the clothing that they wear is very different from everyone else. And B, if you look at their character designs, is very like Minoan priestess style clothing. So from Minoan frescoes, from wall painting, they tend to wear these sort of like layered dresses with fringe on them. And that's what all of these characters are wearing, are these like layered woven garments with this fringe, and their hairstyles weirdly match up with these frescoes. And of course, it's not a one-to-one, but it's clear that there's this, spark of inspiration coming from the Bronze Age, coming from pre-Greek Greece. And I love that that's reflected in the fates, that they are, even if they are, young, middle-aged, old, they are still older than everyone else on Olympus.
Yeah.
So
Are they?
That's just,
I think there's
so
an old
cool.
The Materes or something like that. Because there's another threefold goddess that is very associated with a very old religion on Crete. So that you might have nailed it, and that's what the inspiration was.
Yeah, I never picked up on that,
maybe.
but when you say it, it makes complete sense.
I love it.
Yeah. And there's a lot on Olympus that's interestingly old. There's bits and pieces that are very old, like the preponderance of tripods that are particularly noticeable in the threesome scene, which I just love.
That's what you were fixating on in that scene.
And there's writing. There's like an abandoned temple, and there's writing on the pediment that I would say looks more like linear A or B. And I wasn't sure if you guys had picked up on that. It's like that's not what you would put on a pediment, but I
didn't catch that.
It's interesting symbols that are being used.
I'm going to use this as a pivot, unless you have something else. Because speaking of writing systems, I noticed
cuneiform?
One thing I did notice. Yes, there was cuneiform on the writing that Alexia can't read on the map she gets from the demons. That writing is cuneiform, which I took a little Hittite, but I can't say that it could have been.
Marian's probably more likely.
Yeah, it was probably like Sumerian or Akkadian. I would be very curious. So any sort of ancient Near Eastern experts, any experts in Sumerian or Akkadian or any of those languages, take a look at that scene and write us back to see if that actually says
that would be
anything.
awesome.
Because even like Hittite itself, I do know borrows its writing system from like Mesopotamia, and so a lot of the words are loan words that they just sort of cut, like particularly like words for like different kinds of gods and things like that. But I was going to use this as a pivot to talk about the human arc, the sort of the plot on Earth, and particularly like Alexia and Evios and Kofi and Chiron. And
I mean, that can go
stuff.
two different ways. Like, I have thoughts on Evie and Kofi, and I have thoughts on the very forced pairing of Helena and Alexia. Okay.
Let's start with Alexia and her story, because that's my most immediate connection with that pivot that I'm now really it's showing the seams. This is getting real
all right, here's
sweaty as I continue to explain it.
My immediate thoughts on Alexia is she continues to fill that very Alexander sort of idea, especially with her relationship with Chiron, where it's like that is always very reminiscent to me of Alexander and Aristotle. So you got that going. And then
he even looks like Aristotle.
Yeah.
He totally
I had
does.
never put that together. It was like, oh, the beard.
Yep. Oh, yeah. And then we are teased with something that happened with her parents, who are apparently Amazons, but then why would she know her dad? So again, very confusing. And then overall, like I said, the forced romance, they're on the beach and they meet each other's eyes and you hear off scene, it's like, get a room, lovebirds. And I'm like, why? Like, I know,
like Berlin, like Take My Breath Away starts playing.
my thought was like, why is this a whole Avril Lavigne opening line of Skater Boy? Like, it's so forced. I'm like, and you have the gods. It's like, if you're gonna force it, have Eros there, Aphrodite there, giving like a wink nudge, being like, "Yep, I'm making this happen," because you have them, and they don't, and so it feels like the most forced romance. And I know Greek myth is not, you don't go there for the romance, obviously, but I'm just like, no.
Give me Evios and Kofi over Alexia and Heron any day.
I agree.
Alexia and Heron have no chemistry. I was telling Eli this. They've talked like 4 times.
Yep.
And 3 of those times were in some sort of like
we about to die.
Fight or flight kind of life or death situation.
Yeah, they'd be like, "Oh, I recognize you from that one time we were running for our lives." It's like,
sure. What's your name again?
Yeah, exactly.
Slipped my mind. I don't know.
I really like, I guess, the Alexander of it all, but it sort of feels like after a while, Alexia doesn't really like do anything. She's like there.
He survives.
But yeah, I'm like,
we're literally shown 3 badass women enter the field of the dead, and she's the only one who comes out.
Well, so there's the buff woman in the like leopard skin.
Yes.
But then she disappears.
She doesn't come out of the temple. Yeah.
She gets Bidened or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Biden.
right.
She gets Bidened. Jesus. But because that is a character that Biden. I like weirdly fixated on, where it's like, don't introduce this like 8 foot tall, like massive woman and like not address it at all.
Lady Dimitrescu from Resident Evil Village could never.
But yeah, there's this background sort of character, because there's like a moment. So like to sort of contextualize, like they survive. We'll talk about the ships. I want to talk about the ships a little bit in a second. But they survived the episode on the ships where Zeus like very much puts his thumb on the scale, and then Zeus comes down and basically explains to everyone that's like, yeah, you now have a quest. Like, here's your quest moment. Go do the thing.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, I'm gonna leave with Heron for a second, but like you got to go do this thing. And then so the Thebans sort of show up and they're like, we're Thebans and we're here to help.
And we all look the exact same. Some of us don't have a beard, some of us do, but otherwise it's the same person.
You know they're about to die. They are like more fodder for the
red shirts.
And
show the red shirts.
As we're like going through, there's a cut, because I guess like my thought is maybe this is a thing that like, because the Parloponides and the Sean Negocian, the creators and director, talked a lot about like they had to make a lot of sort of cut, like they had all these grand ideas and then they had to really strip it down because you got to fit this into about 30 minutes a slot and you have only so many episodes. So my thought is maybe like there's another woman who's like kind of got this like thief kind of rogue looking to her. She's got like 2 knives and she just gets Field of the Dead. But like my thought is like, are these just like sort of vestigial remnants of like an earlier draft where like these were characters that said something? Because like my whole thing, I was like, you introduce this like giant woman who's around, and then I wanted like there's like this huge question mark for me, like who is this person? And then she gets Bidented, and I'm like, well, now I'll never know.
And they fail that quest. Like that's the weirdest thing. It's like heroes don't fail quests. Where is the body? And that is what I come to at the end of the season. Like, where did the body go?
They moved it.
It's somewhere.
Okay, maybe this is also a pivot back to Evios and Kofi. Did they steal the body earlier?
Yeah.
Because so like, wouldn't they know that it's not there?
Well, no. So this is my one other big question, like a thing that I think probably got cut for time, because they mentioned very early when Zeus like basically kind of blackmails Evios to being like, you should help because you feel really guilty, and he alludes to some kind of vague crime that they've committed.
Yeah.
And then at the very last episode, right before they have their big battle, Evios is like, oh yeah, by the way, we were the ones that sold the giant body to these people.
So why did they go on the quest in the first place? Wouldn't they know that the body isn't there?
Well, I don't know. Here's the because
yeah, it might have been moved. Like that was the thing. It's like my god is more clever than your god. So like Hera warned Seraphim, and they moved it somewhere. Is my best guess. And they don't.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It also kind of confuses me because like in the origin for Seraphim's story that we get, he basically just kind of accidentally washes up.
Yeah.
He's like running from the guards, and he just kind of finds the giant by accident. So it's like, was there another giant body that they sold?
It could be.
Yeah, are there like multiple pieces of it, and they're like some of them are moved around and some of them are in more difficult to get to places?
Yeah.
That's kind of, I mean, that's the explanation that I came up with simply because that's all we have to work with.
Yeah.
So like if my default is I am going to, try and explain away the plot hole instead of accepting it as a plot hole. That's what I came up with,
Cool.
but it is unclear.
Yeah, benefit of the doubt. I think it's one of those things that kind of just had to get it sort of is on the cutting room floor for time because like in contrast, like I think of I'm partially is because Kofi is voiced by the same actor as Isaac in Castlevania, but like in comparison to I think like Hector and Isaac, who I think are kind of complementary. Sort again because of the same actor, but like our characters that we get a lot of like we understand their motivation sort of very clearly and like fairly economically. We get like a little bit of time with each of the characters in Castlevania. We kind of get to know like why they are the way they are, why Isaac's sort of such like the most intense man ever, I guess is the way to put it. I don't know. He's like kind of a zealot, or he's just like an incredibly intense dude, and why Hector's sort of his kind of bleeding heart. But with Avios and Kofi, they're a little more. We don't get quite enough of that, and I feel like we maybe like I would have really liked to see a scene where because Kofi alludes to it of like Kofi going to the Olympic Games and the like the scheme that they run basically that's like when he alludes to that Evios ran a con where he got a bunch of people to bet against Kofi, and then he knew Kofi was gonna mop the floor with them.
Guys, I want Evios to go full Varric because I get Varric so hard from his character, and I'm like, just take it the next level and become Varric from Korra. I need it. You look like him.
I got major Sokka vibes. I was like,
you got Sokka vibes from him? Okay. Well, and like on the ship scene, their relationship was very Tulio and Miguel from Road to El Dorado, which is like one of my favorite animated bromances ever.
So good.
And then I wanted, and like they brought it back a few times. Like they fall in the ball during the Gigantomachy, and it's like, oh, I bet that's the shortest you've ever felt.
Or when Evios falls off the butt of the hippogriff and everyone's just like womp womp. Like
it's so funny. Yeah, I wanted so much more of them. They were a delight.
Because they're also like they are our main source, particularly Evios, but they are kind of our main sources of comic relief.
Yes.
And they don't show up until basically halfway through the show.
Yeah.
And to what Zoe said last week, they're the ones, especially Evios, who reads queer the most, because my two favorite lines, I wrote them down, is like, we see them in line and they're getting whipped and they go, and Evios' line is like, they obviously whipped us harder than you. And Heron's like, obviously. And then the other line is like, they're taking over the ship and Kofi asks him, like, what are you going to do? What I do best, ramming speed. And you're like, all right.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Colin.
I just had a tiny note when I saw that. I think it's like the beginning of episode 5, but I wrote a little note. It's like, where could they possibly be taking us? And then they turn the corner and it's like this black and red ship. And I wrote down like blood ship. And it turns into Ben-Hur, basically, where they're on the rowing galleys. And I was like, now we have our Ben-Hur analogy.
Also, I don't think anybody is like getting unchained from their oar to go to the bathroom. On the ship.
Yeah.
That just kind of made me laugh.
That was another thing where I was like, they were like, no one ever escapes from the galleys. And it was like, but they escaped so easily. They got out of there.
And with like the classic fake fight ruse.
Exactly.
Right.
Which was like the Tulio Miguel part that I loved. So
Sure. It was the power of friendship that got them off the galley. Not anything else. But
I have to say, like the beginning of that episode, that is the sexiest animated lamp I have seen since Aladdin. So like, every time they like were peering at that lamp, I'm like, Yes. And like Elijah and I know about sexy lamps. We literally have done a Canvas presentation together called Baby Come On, or what's like, Come On Baby Light My Fire. Because we were talking about sexy lamps.
You know, titled that?
Colin came up with that. I remember I remember sitting in our office and I was like, what should I call this presentation? I like turned around because Colin sat right behind me. It's like, Colin,
first year office mates.
First year office mates. It's like, Colin, give me some good titles here. So yeah, we have Colin to thank.
For reference, it's a lamp depicting a woman giving birth to a cornucopia.
No, this one. Well,
we think it's actually a swaddled infant.
Infant.
Yeah.
Read my dissertation, learn more. But the other one we have is literally like a guy kneeling behind a woman who has like one leg up in the air. So that's like our legit sex scene we have going.
I can totally find it.
Mass produced. I've seen copies in the British Museum too. So like,
as our listeners, like, just hang tight and we'll show you this but we can link it actually in like the show notes.
Yeah, we could totally get it.
And I say all of that because as an archaeologist who digs up a lot of ceramics, I love, love, love finding lamps, Roman lamps to be specific, because you never know what's going to be on it. And sometimes it's a little disappointing. Like in that scene on the ship or the galley, it is just a normal, not decorated Greek lamp, but it still looks really cool. But like Roman lamps, you guys, they will put anything on those.
Yeah.
It's great. So it's my favorite thing to dig up is a good old Roman lamp.
A good fascinus in the morning just like really gets the day started right.
Elijah's giggling over there looking at sex scenes on Roman lamps.
No, I'm sorry. I can't find it.
A fascinus, for anyone who doesn't know, is a winged phallus. And that's about all there is to it.
Go to Delos and the Temple of Dionysus, and he just has columns of them.
I love it.
They're the best. They're great.
Excellent.
Oh, okay. I don't know where it is on my new phone.
Eli's stash of sexy lamps has gone missing.
It has. It's a distressing thing. I'll have to search for it. I will find it for when we post this on Twitter.
Yes,
the most important part of this episode.
Obviously.
Archaeologists nerding out for a moment. My other favorite archaeology nerd moment was the centaur when Alexia is visiting Chiron, because it's reminiscent of the tomb of Lefkandi, where they have geometric.
The Lefkandi centaur.
Yes, right?
Oh my gosh.
It's so easy to nerd out. I love that
so much. Well, and there's another good episode, another good sort of representation of, well, of course, the Lefkandi centaur is, 8th century BCE. It's archaic. It's not Bronze Age.
Oh, we talk about the one with human feet?
No.
It's the one with 6 fingers on his hand.
Ooh.
Yeah. He's the 6-fingered man from The Princess Bride.
Yeah, I was like...
No, in Bronze Age pottery, you also get some of those, or kind of late Bronze Age, early geometric, you get those like pot lids that have 4 horses on them as well. Yes. So just a lot of like really good old pottery going on.
Yeah,
in these episodes.
If you guys ever go to Athens and want to check out very cool geometric pottery in Athens, go to the Keramakos Museum. They've got amazing examples there.
So cool.
I might have told the story before on air, but like I had a revelation in Athens that I might have missed my true calling as a classicist when I was in the basement of the Stoa of Attalus, where they just keep like literally 10 trillion Greek vases.
Yeah.
And also all the shards. But like I got to sit down for a while with like basically a box of like pottery fragments and like try to make joins. And I had a moment I'm like, I should have done this. Because I was like a big Lego kid. And maybe it's just like my kind of like sort of like anxious and attention, like very sort of like nervous energy. But like to just sit and like connect things and then like hold it up to a graph and be like, late 4th century. And then the person be like, you're pretty good at this. I was like, it was so validating. And I was like, shit, I would have been great at this. Like, put me in this basement with a box of pottery.
That is where you will be, strewing pottery for all of lifetime. That is the Sisyphus torture of an archaeologist right there.
See, I would have loved that. That would have been great for me. I'd do this for free.
People do.
Don't tell them
they
that.
Make the archaeological world go
that.
round. No, like my first dig was a mammoth dig in Washington State, and literally like this little old ladies club would get together and so sexy.
I don't know if you can really see
this is the sex lamp.
This is the sex lamp. I passed.
We're all oohing and awing on
Naturally.
it.
That is flexible.
That is-
Right?
That is true.
That is acrobatic
Her
right there.
leg is up there.
Yeah. Wow.
So yes, we have
I'm
sexy legs.
entranced.
I think.
But yeah, we would have little old ladies sort through wet screening.
Yeah,
I hate
there's
that.
like a little bit of a better.
That's from the British Museum. Those are my pictures.
They are your pictures. That's where I found it in my phone.
Yep, that is our parturition scene, as I like to say it in fancy academic terms. So,
All right. Well, now that we've seen, what were we talking about, guys?
archaeology. We went off on a tangent there.
I have more to say about Evios and Kofi. If
Hell
we want
yeah.
to go back
Please
to that.
do.
Yes.
So, I mean, obviously they're wonderful. I really like them. But I was curious what you all thought about sort of the racial aspect of their con that they pull. So the reason why the con works is because Kofi and Evios are like, the Greeks will never bet on a black man. And part of me is like, the modern conception of racial makeup and ethnicity does not map onto antiquity. This is something that listeners, you can go, I'm sure that there are many articles that you can find. There are many articles you can find if you're interested in learning more about that. But I thought that was a really interesting was a hint of like what they could have done with sort of women's issues in the show. And I think they could have focused more on that. They could have focused more on sort of giving light to Kofi's experiences as a black man in a sort of imagined to be racist Greek society. But I thought that was really interesting and quite powerful in some ways. So I was curious about what you all thought of that.
Well, and the Pancratian games are not like the Pancration is a event. It's not actually one of the big games that we know from the ancient world. The Nemean, Olympic, and
Pythian.
And
Right.
Pythian.
Yeah. And like the only thing I remember about who's allowed
Isthmian.
Isthmian. There we go.
Isthmian.
The only thing I remember hearing about was later, not Alexander the Great, but one of his predecessors, Alexander the First, a prince of Macedonia, wanted to compete in the Olympic Games, and there was a big question of, do we allow him because he's not Greek? Like that's that question of like, who is Greek? Well, they speak Greek,
right?
And they eventually allow him to go in because he's a prince, but they're not necessarily like. That's what's interesting. Is like, would they just let some random commoner, regardless of skin color, person just come in and compete? And I don't know if that's necessarily accurate. I liked that question overall of just identity and who are people willing to see compete. And, you know, that's very reflective of modern sports is like who is sacrificing their bodies for our entertainment. And for the longest time, we wouldn't allow them to. That's true of a lot of modern sports. So I think that was a really good reflection of some of these modern issues with athletics and who's allowed to compete and how have our views of athletes changed over time. I don't know how much more it can translate onto the ancient world because I just don't know enough about athletics to comment much more on that.
Yeah, it's a very, like, I was just thinking, like, he's almost like a Jesse Owens kind of figure where he really, like, he defies everyone's racist expectations and how well he does. I was wondering about this myself, so I did a little surface level research because I was reminding myself so the Olympics, the games at Olympia were one of, like, the 4 big Pan-Hellenic games that would happen. Basically, they would rotate. You know, you would have a different one every year, so each one would happen in a 4-year cycle. And for entry, so you had to be a freeborn Greek man, basically, to compete in one of the Pan-Hellenic games, like the Olympics. And although sort of the exception of that is in the chariot races, where it's like the owners of the chariots are the ones sort of... Yeah, like there were women who were the chariot owners who won at the Olympics, although the competitors were also men. And then there also was a separate festival at Olympia for Hera where unmarried girls would compete in like foot races. But generally, sort of speaking, like only sort of freeborn Greek or citizens of a polis would be able to compete. But then my realization was like, one, like this doesn't really actually bother me in the show for two reasons. Because one, it's really more of a modern commentary than anything else. So like it doesn't need to like follow ancient rules. And then two, because also you could just say like I don't know if he explicitly states it. I don't actually, it's been a few days since I saw it, but like he may not have necessarily competed in the actual event, but he could have just been there and that they could have just been running, because like I would not be surprised that there would be at the Olympic Games other stuff happening around the side. Like, you know, informal fights or whatever, informal fight clubs.
Like he
says, I think that he won the Pancration Games, which means that of course, to us, we're thinking, okay, Olympian, Nemean, Isthmian, Pythian, but that could just be, Evios and Kofi walked into town and saw that they were doing some Pancratia tournaments, and they were like, you know what, it would be a great way for me to make some money.
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
And is it implied that that's how they met?
I think so. Yeah, I hope we get backstory.
The OG con.
Yeah.
That's like the first time they like got together to con others. At least according to
their, we need their backstory.
I need
eventually.
all of that. I want that side story. I need a spin-off that's just Evios and Kofi.
Please, now that the Blood of Zeus official Twitter follows Christy and has paid attention to this,
Charlie, Flask,
this
we
is
know
our
you're
call
listening.
to action. Please, we will be forever indebted. And I think something else too is that because of the way that the Greeks conceived of race and ethnicity, just because Kofi is black doesn't mean that he couldn't have been a citizen of a polis.
Yeah.
So that's another sort of interesting, it might be an interesting thing to kind of play with is, what systematic issues were put in place for Kofi versus what social issues he would have faced. Whether that is going to fit with the vibe of Blood of Zeus, which is, massive gigantomic-y battle scenes, maybe for the spinoff that will be a good.
Yeah.
This is maybe a plug I don't need to make, but that is almost reminiscent of like Yasuke, which is an anime on Netflix right now that's based on a real historical guy who was a black man who ended up in like 16th century Japan and became a samurai. What? Although that anime involves like robots and stuff, but. Zoe, do you not know about this show?
I do not know about this show, but I'm going to watch it now.
Okay, so it's called Yasuke. So yeah, it's another Netflix anime about based on a historical person who was he was brought to Japan, entered into Nobunaga. I think he was originally enslaved and then became free and like entered into Nobunaga's service and basically rose to the rank of samurai and like held landed titles and the whole thing.
I was going to say, like, I hope, like, let's not make Kofi a slave. Let's avoid that for his backstory.
Right. Yeah,
Agreed.
Exactly.
No, it does not have to be the case. And like, let's not go there. That is a trope that is very played out. Please don't go there.
Right. Yeah.
I have two questions relating to like how the Greeks would have perceived others and how they would have represented them. So like one is Heron as an archer. And then two is not just Chiron, but all of the centaurs as an advanced civilization,
who
which
like
is a little counterintuitive.
Feel the need to like protect themselves. They have like a very like closed, isolationist like type mountain, right? Like Alexia had to like get in via like the pulleys and ropes and stuff, and she's like, "No, we can't lose you and everything in your head. Like you have so much knowledge." Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, because sort of traditionally, I guess we'd say the centaurs they're almost like you can read them as like metaphorical for, I mean, I am interested in this as someone who sort of works in like animal studies, and posthumanism is the idea of like someone who's part animal, and the centaurs as being sort of representative of like uncontrolled and unrestrained, and even horses themselves as sort of being figurative. This is why like Poseidon is associated with horses, because it's like a raw nature motif. And centaurs are in Greek mythology by and large like disruptive. They raid, they abduct
when they're
like
drunk.
Frat bros.
Yeah, they're like drunk frat bros, sort of let off the chain.
Yeah.
They're prone to sort of excess in every sort of way, because they have this sort of animalistic side to them. The exception, of course, being Chiron, who's even his like lineage is like a bit apart from the rest of the centaurs. and he is the trainer of heroes, so like Achilles and Jason, which is why like Alexia is being sort of looped into this sort of hero like the almost like teacher lineage or something of like, Chiron, these are all of his students and this is his like pedigree, so to speak. They almost become like, to my knowledge, they become like elves in this show, where they're these like kind of nature-based wise, like Chiron's got that sweet planetarium that he busts out at one point where he's got like an accurate representation of the movement of the stars.
Yeah.
And then it was really weird because like Neil deGrasse Tyson's voice was just like the cosmos.
Yeah, they're very interesting. I think it's interesting to me that the show kind of falls into the idea that these sort of ancient nature creatures have access to all the knowledge, or as all this like esoteric, like cuneiform, understanding what language the cuneiform is and being able to read it. And he takes like one look at the map and he's like, it's a constellation keyed map, which kind of gets into some interesting anthropological ideas of like the noble savage and sort of the difference between the knowledge of the gods, which is like automata, and speaking of which, the one and only thing that matters to me is Hephaestus's automaton owl.
Oh, yeah.
It's the only thing.
Go back to Clash of the Titans.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a Bubo reference.
Which I love.
It's the only thing that matters to me. I've never seen Clash of the Titans.
It's the original one, too. Like, it's old school reference.
Yeah. Well, in the new one, they take out Bubo, and they're like, what's that? They're like, it's junk, and they throw it out. And it's really weird because someone like literally just starts peeing on it. And it was like, I was like super rude.
Okay.
I made that last part up. But
anyway, like the different forms of knowledge that are possessed by the gods and the centaurs is very interesting. I hadn't really thought about that before.
The other thing about Chiron that I thought about is there's a lot in these back half episodes. There's a lot of Empire Strikes Back moments. And Chiron is like almost like a one-to-one Lando Calrissian figure.
Yeah.
Where he like betrays the team, or he betrays Alexia to save his people from the Empire. And then at the end kind of comes back and helps out. And then the other Empire Strikes Back moment is when Heron has the vision of his friends getting hurt with the Fates. And he's like, and he needs to leave. And then Zeus is like Heron, your training you must complete. Which is real weird that he talked like that for like a minute.
Totally.
Yeah, and then like Heron had to like go into like a cave and he had to like fight Seraphim, but when he cut off Seraphim's head, it was his own face, and it was like, so like I thought it was a little weird, but like it was very much like there's a lot of Empire Strikes Back, and I just became fixated on the idea of Chiron as just Lando.
I have a question. I am totally unclear on what happened with the map, because in the scene where like the demons show up and Chiron like knocks some mud onto the map and stands on it.
Yeah.
Which to me was like, he's hiding the map. And then he gives Seraphim a fake map. But then I was like, wouldn't Seraphim look at the map? Wouldn't, like, even if he doesn't do it in that scene.
Does he know where it is?
No, I think that my reading was, and this probably wouldn't work if the map was drawn on with like ink, but my reading was that he like made a copy of the map with the mud and he did like a print of it somewhere else.
So that was my second thought.
That would make sense.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
But how?
But that also wouldn't work.
Right. It doesn't, like, it makes sense on some level.
Kinda.
But like Colin said, it's a two-dimensional object with ink on it.
That is centaur knowledge
like
beyond our understanding, obviously.
Oh, God. You're right.
What you fail to realize, though, is that centaur hooves have tiny little hands inside them that just made a copy of the map.
Oh, that is so creepy. I love it. Those little feli.
I'm very confused by that. But you know what? You're right. The hands in the centaur hoof solves that problem.
It really
so thank
does.
you.
Yes. Okay, I have questions about the ending. Are we that far?
Let's get back to let's finish up with the Archer question, and then we need to talk about
yes. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So my only thought about the Archer, and like Christy's exactly right, because like archery very often in like Greek heroic traditions is a sort of lesser than practice. Like the main heroes usually fight with like shield and spear, and to a lesser extent a sword or some other, which leads me to another thought, but I'll come back to that in a second. So I don't really have much to say about it other than I think they just maybe wanted someone to have a bow, because it's sort of like you can't round out your fantasy party unless somebody has a bow. Or maybe also as a way so you don't get Heron to fight Seraphim sort of hand to hand, because Seraphim would presumably annihilate him. But that's all I really have.
I will say Heron has made the bow look about as good as Legolas made it look. So like he was doing good work with the bow. I'm not complaining on that front.
Yeah.
And Heracles completed some of his labors with a bow and arrow. So it's not totally out of the realm of significant, but I thought that was interesting. And eventually, I think my understanding is the sword got left behind with Talos. So
This is, yes.
Okay.
So
This is my.
he's gonna have to go get the sword at some point, right?
I really kept expecting him to get the sword from Seraphim,
Yes.
or at some point. I was like, why?
Mhm.
I had actually convinced myself that by the end of the show, he had already, like, I had, like, invented a, like, Mandela effect to memory, where Heron got the sword at the end and it, like, did something. But then I finished, I'm like, oh no, Heron never got the magic sword back. And then so, in fact, Zeus made the sword. Seraphim was the only person who used it. If Zeus had never made the sword, none of this would have ever happened.
Okay, hear me out. Wait, I'm sorry, Colin. If Zeus hadn't blanked, then none of this would have
This
happened.
is true.
Is literally the plot of the show.
And Greek mythology half the time.
Right, yeah. Like,
I retract my point that you are correct. But yeah, as far as we know, that magic sword that Zeus made is at the bottom of the ocean with Talos.
Yeah.
I think it would be interesting to sort of, I mean, I like that it's sort of, you know, when we have the training sequence, he tries to train with like I guess he trains with a sword and shield against a spear.
Yeah.
But he just fails over and over and over again until he figures out like, oh, I can pinpoint sort of, you know,
joints or
shoot my sword through the joint.
Yeah.
And I like the acknowledgement towards the end that like the strength that Zeus might have is not the same strength that Heron might have. But then of course Heron suddenly can summon lightning, so whatever. My only complaint is that Heron is not wearing brightly colored Scythian pants the whole time.
Yes.
As he should be. And
that is a thing Eli and I actually have talked about and want to see in one of these things we review, is like the trousers with the eyeballs on them.
Love it.
Yeah.
I want it so
or the
bad.
various like patterns.
And so for those of you who might not know this, ancient Greek statuary was painted, and barbarians or non-Greeks is probably, you know, the correct term, who the Greeks would call barbarians, tended to wear pants. And there's just some beautiful recreations of pants wearing. I think this is the one I just shared with our group that, you know, may end up in the notes. I don't know. Is a
it's all
Scythian
going
archer.
in. We hold nothing back on this show.
With a Scythian archer, with just this incredible like hippie pants. Like they're just psychedelic.
They look like leggings to me now. Like you could go
Okay.
Yeah,
and
no,
get
they are.
You can get them.
They're yoga pants.
You can get them as leggings. I'm trying to find where you can buy these leggings.
Oh, amazing.
They exist.
Next conference, I'm gonna roll up looking like
Yes.
this.
Be a good look.
Anyway, that's my only complaint about him being an archer, is that he doesn't have the pants.
Mm-hmm. And he's wearing a very sort of, his tunic is barely there.
as it should be.
He is scantily clad, that man.
I mean, to be fair, if this was true Greek myth, they'd all be naked the whole time.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
So, like, that seemed accurate to me.
Again, nudity. It all comes back to
nudity.
Netflix promising nudity, and then we only get titties, and like that's not nudity, you guys.
No.
And giant titties, basically.
Right, giant titties, which I'm, you know, thank you, but
So we got to talk about the giants.
We do need to talk about the Giants.
Please.
Yeah.
I love the monster design. I think it's so cool. I kept changing which one was my favorite because they just kept getting weirder and more wonderful.
Which one is everyone's favorite?
I do love the Artemis of Ephesus, the multiple boobed one, but I think I like it was like I think it's Scorpion guy who can like roll into a ball. He was pretty cool.
It's all very like this is again. I was wondering this because I described this I think earlier as like an anime influenced, but then the show introduces itself, I finally noticed, as a Netflix anime. But then I was like, in my pedantic self. I was like, well, it's only anime if it comes from the anime region of Japan. Otherwise, it's just sparkling cartoons.
Technically, I looked this up because there is gripe about this. So, although it's produced by Powerhouse Animation Studios, its animation is outsourced to South Korean studios called Moa Film and Hanho Hyungup, who have also worked with Disney. So, not Japanese, but at least Asian. So
this is the thing that's really common. I was watching an interview with an animator, and they were talking about like a lot of times like animation studios, like they kind of outsource and ship out parts of the project, and like Japanese animation studios tend to be very in-house and kind of like every studio is kind of its own thing, and then it's a lot of vertical integration. They kind of make the shows from the bottom up, whereas like other like shows tend to outsource the labor, and then the US tends to work really closely with studios in South Korea. So like, for example, like Legend of Korra, a lot of that show was animated in South Korea, and things like, and that this is another example.
Well, and the reason they do that is because for some reason, especially like millennials and Gen Z, I'm sure is getting there. It's like it's not necessarily cool as an adult to say that I watch cartoons, but like watching animes, like you're like nerdy, classy watching anime. Like it is acceptable in a way that watching cartoons, which I also do, is not. So shout out to Star versus the Forces of Evil from Disney, because I also love that, which is very much a cartoon. So
I stand for Steven Universe, among others. But,
in my head, it's like cartoons are aimed at children, though not necessarily consumed by them. And in my head, anime is sort of aimed at older audiences, though not necessarily consumed by them. Is that fair?
Well, then you got like The Simpsons or something like that.
Yeah. I feel like that's the traditional sort of background, but I think more and more cartoons and cartoon styles of art are being used to do adult shows. Like The Simpsons is a really good early example, but like Bob's Burgers
that's true.
is not really a show for children.
BoJack,
I mean, like
definitely not for children.
Right.
Yeah, like all of that.
Right.
So
BoJack is absolutely not a show for children.
No.
But they're not anime in the same way.
That's true. Okay, you're right.
Oh, but anyway, but I was going to say, but the anime influence, I think, shows its hand very strongly in the design of these monsters in the Giants. They all very much feel, they're very like kaiju-esque.
yes.
Yes.
I was going to say, my favorite is the, like I said, I think earlier, the giant bird one that flies over everyone and then like magnetizes them up into its wings.
I like the one that had captured Zeus and Hera, but like I like the version of when he's just been blasted by Zeus, so you just kind of get some muscle tissue and bone going. I'm like, that looks amazing and terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think my favorite is the weird lizard lady that like she's really close to the ground.
With the laser
and she,
eyes.
Yeah,
Mouse,
like,
right?
skitter. Yeah, I think she has the laser mouth and she like skitters around, and I think I like her because
I feel like she killed the most gods by the end of it.
Yeah. Well, I think also part of it, I mean, and this is, I'm looking at a picture of them all sort of side by side now. And as with a lot of modern sort of animation or a lot of modern monster design, the sort of biologically male monsters get a lot more sort of diversity of forms. So you've got weird Batman, bird, magnetic wingman. You've got like creepy skeleton with his like crown thing man. Whereas sort of the 3 or 4 sort of visibly biologically female, which, you know, whatever, are much less diverse. Like you get sort of strong woman, dainty woman, and then you get lizard woman, and so that's why I think
so
she's
another
my
bogus
favorite.
Bunsen Beans.
Yeah.
Right.
Is
Yeah.
dainty woman
Strong woman
like the squid kind of?
Yeah, she's the tentacle woman.
I feel like she could have done so much more. I feel like we saw her like very briefly.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this picture.
Yeah, this is just kind of a lineup of all of them. And
the scorpion guy.
Which, I mean, to be fair to sort of the male giants, they also are all like ripped, except for Skeletor. Skeletor is not ripped because he's a skeleton, but they get a lot more sort of physical diversity in terms of, you know, their sort of weights and their makeup. I mean, you've got the 100-hander who's just hands.
Love him. So cool.
Like,
Ugh.
yeah.
And
Everyone is smooth as a Ken doll, though.
I was just gonna say that. I was like, there's no genitalia. Like, if we're gonna have boobs,
so like, keep
like
promising nudity, and they keep failing on that promise. So.
Sorry, not to bring it back to nudity.
I'm trying to remember in the show if there's any point where there's like human breasts. I feel like there is, but I can't pinpoint it.
There's
like side boob, because I think in the threesome scene, like her hair covers them, but you can tell
her hair does the mermaid thing.
She's like mermaid nipple, just nipple covers.
I feel like Castlevania did. Castlevania definitely had some real nudity going, but like not.
Yeah, you don't get any butts. You don't get any like human nudity. So, because like Hera, you can see half of her boob on either side of her dress, but like
she has tasteful side boob going.
There's like a rule in like for like at least in I think in like just at least in live action, there's like a rule of like what percentage of like breast or butt can be covered before you like get bumped up to the next like rating level. My other favorite game is also like you're in a PG-13 movie, you're allowed one F-bomb.
Yep.
But like,
where do you drop it?
Yeah, where do you put it?
But I mean, all of my griping aside, I think the giants are exceptionally well designed.
So cool.
And I think they really got to go to town with what primordial creatures of the deep would look like.
Yeah.
And they're so cool. I really like them.
Yeah. Hands, like all of the griffin, again, I'm glad there's like screw the winged horses, give me a griffin, give me like we can find better monsters for our steeds, basically.
Yeah.
Charon, the Fates, like they imagined those so well. Like I enjoyed that part so much.
Yeah.
So we can talk sort of in the final moments because I particularly want to hear Eli's thoughts on this, because basically in the final moments of the battle, as they're trying to get the cauldron back, to get the giants back in their vault, and then the gods have sort of a war with one another, then there's a betrayal, and then everything. Heron defeats Seraphim by unlocking his Zeus powers, but in this fight, Zeus sacrifices himself, basically, and there's a callback to kind of the first battle with the giants where when him and Hera kind of connect for the first time. And Hera also, I forgot, Hera gets her arm chopped off.
And then we don't see her again, right?
Yeah, so we don't, so where it ends, and this I guess probably should be the final thing we talk about, but where it ends was like the final reveal with Hades at the end. So we kind of have like where like what does everyone think about where we've ended, and then potentially where the show could go from here?
So I was thinking back to a conversation we had last week about how we're representing good and evil, but I thought it was interesting to note that Ares and Hades are both more white, and they're closely shaven heads, and they give me slightly like
skinheady.
Yeah, skinhead kind of vibes, and like you're getting the sense that they're evil. And we haven't seen enough of Hades, and like I always get really frustrated of Hades being depicted as out to get all his other siblings, because as far as Greek mythology tells us, Zeus gave Hades his daughter Persephone, and he's chill. Like, yeah, Underworld's not the best thing to rule, but like he never appears overly ambitious in mythology. So like all of these modern adaptations that are like, and that's what I hated too, is like Hera has this righteous anger, but it appears to be manipulated behind the scenes by Hades the whole time, which is really frustrating. So I find a lot of that very interesting. I did write down possible predictions for the next season. So I'm hoping to get some Alexia backstory, as well as Evios and Kofi. Would love to know more about them. I think the demons are still going to be present just because we have even more giant bodies laying around now. So like I imagine that's going to continue to be a problem. Because Hera got her arm chopped off, I'm really hoping for a Hera Hephaestus moment, because like where else are you going to get like
new prosthetic.
Prosthetic.
Yes.
You're gonna go to Hephaestus. So it's like I'm kind of hoping for that moment.
Man.
That's a conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be so good.
Retrieve the sword from Talos and then go on an underworld journey, because Hades is involved in somehow. So like those are my general predictions. But like that Hephaestus Hera moment is kind of one I really want, especially because there was such a good Hephaestus Zeus moment that I could see them doing something really fun with that.
Yeah, I quite liked the ending, and I actually cried when, just little tears, not like not super emotional about this, but a little emotional.
You have a Nero moment. You're like, 1 tear from me and 1 tear for the show.
When Zeus becomes a lightning bomb, and not because I was sad that Zeus died, but because seeing Hera realize how badly she had up, and like the power of her having gone through, both having been betrayed, both, I mean, the scene where Zeus is like, they will betray you, and you see Hera like thinking, and she doesn't explicitly say this, but it's, I mean, was clear to me that she was going, I've already been betrayed so many times by you. What's one more betrayal? And like, at least them, I don't care about. I'm not married to them. Like, you are the person, you know, you saved me from that original giant. Like, you winked at me, you know, we got out together, and you still treat me the way you treat me. So like, so what if they betray me? Like, that was really like gut punching to me. And then of course when he dies and Hera has this like, oh shit, like all of this I did because I was really mad at him, and now he's gone, and now I'm realizing that actually my anger was really destructive and bad. I mean, not unjustified, but badly sort of projected outwards and very damaging to everyone around me. And sort of her moment of like, oh shit, was like really emotional to me. And I was sad that I didn't get more from that. I'm really interested to see, I'm hoping Hera comes back. I mean, she has to, right? Like, I want to see Hera dealing with the consequences, because at the very end we see sort of Heron wake up in this very Lord of the Rings Frodo waking up, and like the hobbits
it was so
coming
strange
in
when he wakes up and then Gandalf is like, it is the 13th of October.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
And then like Pippin and Merry walked in,
right,
and like Lawson,
yeah.
It was real strange. And then
and like Sam is weird and standoffish and shy about it all. You know, I was like, what movie am I watching now? But you know, he wakes up and he like goes to the bathhouse, and there's like, oh God, sitting in the pool, and they're like kicking their legs, and like everything's fine. And I was like, surely everyone's more traumatized than this.
I wonder if too, like, because we have the pleasure of watching Zeus die like 3 times practically, and the moment you're talking about is Zeus chose to sacrifice himself, and like that hit Hera, versus like the second time Hera's like, special delivery, stab to the neck, and like oh, that felt good.
Yeah.
Right. You're like, yes, good job. Well done. Yeah. So I'm very interested to see how if the next season deals with sort of the trauma of like Olympus being taken, more or less. Like, you know, Zeus has this speech of like, no army has ever taken Olympus, but the giants would have won. If the whole cauldron plot hadn't played out the way it did, the giants would have won, and Olympus has been forever scarred by this fight. So I really want to see them sort of try and dig into that a little bit more. And I'm excited to see sort of, hopefully Hera will come back. Hopefully we'll get to sort of see that. I really hope Zeus doesn't come back. They didn't have like a soul scene with Zeus, which makes me think he probably won't, in the same way that Seraphim got that soul scene at the end.
Yeah.
So I hope Zeus stays dead. I'm done with Zeus. I was done with Zeus in episode 1,
like,
but like,
Zeus got a slight redemption arc, like slight. Like, he tried to atone, he sacrificed himself, and like, if that's how it goes out, I'm okay with it. So
right, exactly. In terms of what I want, like in addition to that, in terms of myth, I mentioned on the last episode, I'd really like to see Persephone and see, I mean, specifically maybe some like Persephone Hera stuff of, speaking of like maligned wives. That might be really interesting to sort of dig into and pull apart, especially if, like Christy, I don't love the characterization of Hades as being inherently evil. But if that's the route they choose to go on, whomst is Persephone? And like, what has Persephone gone through? And some real like goddess, wife, queen bonding between Persephone and Hera would cleanse my soul. So, but I mean, I will say my last thing, I will say I'm very excited for season 2 after watching the last 4 episodes. First 4 episodes, I was like, I couldn't care less about season 2. And after these last 4, I'm like, I want to watch that now.
Yeah.
Like, so.
Because we don't have to have any more backstory. It's like, we can just keep going.
No more.
No more backstory. No more
Right.
flashbacks.
No, we really didn't need all that backstory.
My like one sort of like just not gripe or something, but like one change is in the final kind of moments of the last episode. There's a very heavy-handed use of flashback, which I think we could have done with a lot less of. And this has to, I think, do with the way we consume this show, where like I watched all 4 episodes basically in one, or these 4 episodes in one sitting, and I had just seen these scenes, so I don't need them played out in basically like they basically repeated the scenes. Like I really I like the use of like a quick callback to an earlier scene or a line of it, but I feel like we only need like one shot or one line or two, not the entire scene. And it was when Zeus was Zeus and Hera, like Zeus's final moments, and then again with Seraphim and Heron. It felt like we got like half of episode 5 in episode 8, just like played back to us.
Which is a money-saving technique for most animation.
This is true. But episode 8 is 37 minutes long. It's much longer than all the other ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is absolutely a thing. There was an infamous episode of Legend of Korra where they rely a lot on older footage.
They were so mad about that too.
I know. I feel bad because when they explained it, it was either we do an episode like this or like we have to fire people early, and like we needed it to like keep the lights on in the show.
How about more extensive funding of the arts?
I know, right?
That'd be great.
Oh, one other thing I wanted, as I was hearing people talk, at some point Zeus acknowledges that Perseus and Heracles were real. Especially because he's a god. Can we just have some Heracles in here? I
wonder if Heracles is like. I almost wonder if he's one of the background characters, and I just didn't notice him.
I didn't see anyone buff enough. I was looking.
Oh man, can you imagine if that 8 foot tall buff woman was Heracles?
Yes,
that would have made sense.
Heraclea.
That would have made so much sense.
That would have been so good. Oh my god, that would have been so good. I want that. We could have had it all.
Okay, I think my like maybe disappointment in the ending is Seraphim, because I feel like I'm not happy with, I guess, that he died. I kept expecting him to like get a chance to have a redemption arc. And I mean, it seems like he's going to be around and is now enslaved by Hades, ?
Which is the ultimate punishment. Like, he always just didn't want to be someone's pawn, right? Like, that's kind of why I get the no at the end. Was just like, oh, man.
Yeah, but I just...
Oh, beans. Not again.
I wanted so bad for him and Heron to, like, actually have a better conversation other than just we're, like, facing off with our armies or we're physically trying to kill each other. I wanted them to have like a heart-to-heart, a bro conversation, and then I want them to go on the road together and have a buddy cop comedy, because I think it would be beautiful.
Yes. I am ready for like post-redemption Seraphim and Heron, like Heron getting into hijinks and Seraphim having to like come by and pluck his much smaller brother out of like whatever fight he got himself into.
Yes.
Or like Heron braiding Seraphim's long, glorious hair. Like, I'm very ready for their exploration of brotherhood and like the power of, I mean, this is seen a lot in found family tropes of like the power of finding family in places where you don't expect it when you've lost everything else. And like they have the very real chance of brotherhood in both a biological sense, but more importantly in a emotional sense.
Although Heron gets that on Mount Olympus. Like, he got all the brothers and sisters.
But like, nobody's going to give Seraphim that chance, right? Except for maybe Heron. So he's the only one who could maybe actually bring him back from the edge. And I feel like he doesn't like give him a chance.
This is like one of as you're talking now, it reminds me, it's like one of those, I think, kind of unfortunate tropes in movies and storytelling sort of large, where it's almost like the rich get richer and the poor get poorer kind of thing, where like Heron is sort of privileged or blessed with these kind of advantages, and then like his his arc kind of is, and like what, and he does experience hardship, but like his star sort of ascends, whereas Seraphim, who kind of starts out in the hole, just kind of further, just goes down further into the hole.
Yeah, which like some of that is his own choices, right? And we sort of talked about them being like, you know, the two paths that you can take with your anger. And it's very much like the white cowboy hat and the black cowboy hat at this point. But it's like, I feel like that would be the most satisfying redemption arc then. It's like, yeah, I'm expecting Heron's star to ascend, but bringing Seraphim back from the edge would be so satisfying. So I really hope that we do get more Seraphim, and that he gets to that point where he can make choices and he can maybe make the right choices.
Well, and I mean, I think it'll be interesting because Zeus was like, well, I could, you know, revert Seraphim back to his human form. And now Heron seems to have all of Zeus's abilities.
I thought of that.
Well, okay, all is a weird thing, but like he suddenly, you know, Zeus dies and then he has his little like Yoda moment, you know, be one with the Force, and then he can control lightning, which he then uses to obliterate his brother. But, you know, in theory, because Zeus had that power, so should Heron. So that could be really interesting of like a, you know, as we talked about in the last episode, a descent into the underworld, a catabasis, much like Heracles, and trying to bring something back from the underworld and having it be Seraphim. I mean, if he has to pick, oh man, can you imagine if he had to like pick between his mom and Seraphim though?
That actually is a really great idea.
That's a great idea. He's not going to pick Seraphim.
You know, Electra's going to be like, no, take your brother.
Yeah. Of course she
right,
is.
I know. Yeah. The woman is going to sacrifice herself. We know that's how it's going to go.
I hope Charlie and Vlas are listening to this, and then we say that, and they're like, oh, shit, and they like start scribbling out something. But that's
I am here for your storyboarding needs. I make no money. Hire me.
But yes, I am also now very excited for season 2.
It should be coming out fairly soon, I think. I don't know, actually, no.
I looked it up, and they officially made the announcement in December 2020 that there would be a season 2. And I think it took them over a year of production. So we should probably expect something in spring of next year.
Okay, that would make sense. Okay.
On the side of things, because Disney is full bent doing live action versions of all of their animated versions, there is going to be a new Disney live action Hercules.
No.
But done by a guy who's apparently involved in Marvel, and he believes that it is worthy of multiple movies.
No.
So
do you know who it is?
I forget. It was a BuzzFeed article that was like, what are the next 10 Disney movies that are going to be live action? And that was mentioned as one of them.
Don't touch Disney's Hercules. It's perfect.
I know.
It doesn't need to be a live action remake.
No one.
Leave it alone.
No, there are too many Hercules
none of them
movies
needed to be.
already.
With the exception of Jungle Book. That one I liked.
Listen, the only way I will never accept it. But also, if they do not cast Danny DeVito again, I will personally tear down Disney with my hands. I'm
picturing
Disney headquarters.
it.
I'm coming if you don't have Danny DeVito.
I'm picturing it.
I remember just like I was trying to coax Zoe down from like you're like Zoe, you put.
Well, and to me, one of my favorite parts about that movie is the music, and they're like undecided if it's going to have the music. And I'm like, then don't have it.
Oh.
I feel like it. Oh.
It's like Mulan all over again.
I never saw Mulan.
I still haven't watched the Mulan yet.
I still need to watch Raya and the Last Dragon.
I did watch that.
I do want to see.
And Honest Trailers was very accurate. And then like the message being like trust people, and like for the entirety of the movie is showing that trusting people gets you stabbed in the back, except for the very end. So it's like, yeah, that's a mixed message.
No, I don't like that.
Very pretty though. I will say that.
It looks
very
pretty. Yeah.
Okay, here's a question. I know we're coming up on 2 hours of recording, but if you had to live action cast Blood of Zeus characters, who would you pick?
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
I'm not good with...
Sorry.
You need somebody who's like, who can be charismatic enough while being like a blank piece of white paper that is Heron. He's so boring. So we need somebody really like
Okay. The guy
whatever.
from who I believe is a beautiful Greek man. Anyway, maybe he's too old now, but the guy who's from Entourage, right?
The guy who was the boyfriend in Devil Wears Prada?
I think so. He's in a few different things. He's just a beautiful Greek man in general.
Oh, I think I know who you mean.
Adrian Grenier.
I don't see him as like an action hero. I guess Heron's not really an action hero.
My gripe against a lot of like fan casting is that they tend to fixate on appearance, and it's very surface level.
Yeah,
like, and they're like, oh, this person has the right sort of build and skin tone and hair color, like therefore they're the right.
That's fine for Heron. He has nothing else going.
Right, there's nothing else to recommend.
Yeah, like you gotta cast like it's like when Paul Verhoeven cast for Starship Troopers, he like deliberately cast a bunch of like actors who were in like high school teen dramas because he basically wanted like the most vapid people ever to be in that movie.
It worked.
Oh, man. I was going to say Alexis Yoroulis, who is the actor from My Life in Ruins, who played like the hunky bus driver. But he's old enough now that I think he could be a great
I can see that,
Zeus.
yeah. Because he has a beard,
just kind of like, right. And like most of his characters that I've seen, he's in the Durrells. He's like kind of like a little bit more like fun and upbeat, but I think he could be really good as Zeus.
Yes. Versus, I just watched Mayor of Easttown, which was very good, and Kate Winslet. Like, I could see making a very good Hera, just because, like,
I love Kate Winslet. Yeah. You know who I want to sing? When I kind of want for Hera, maybe this is just influenced by recent media appearance, Gillian Anderson.
Yes,
that would be good.
Oh, that would just make Hera even more like the ideal woman.
Yeah, my thoughts exactly.
Who would play Seraphim? That's the real question. In all of that, like, costume makeup.
Ooh.
Again, this is like the more interesting character.
Mm-hmm. You got to think. Yeah, you got to think about like who can deliver that kind of energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I forget the guy who plays Loki, who is also in a new Disney.
Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah.
Tom Hiddleston.
But he's not quite sexy enough for me to really pull that off.
No, you need someone with like intent. You need like an intense person.
He's also very twiggy. Yeah. No offense, Tom Hiddleston. Your body is perfect, but like you need someone who's buff.
Yeah.
Like,
because he's kind of got to be scary,
right?
But you're
it's a
like,
hard combination.
Yeah, he's like
so easy,
buff and scary.
He's like the bad
in
guy,
anime.
But you're kind of like want to see him win.
Maybe Henry Cavill reprising a white-haired prosthetic
after watching
Witcher
The Witcher. Can I get the Witcher Henry Cavill doing that? Then yes.
Oh yeah, no. He's the only Henry Cavill I accept.
There's like you need someone who's like legit like terrifying. That I'm trying to think like that's really what I want from Seraphim. Like someone like when you're standing in a room with him, you are afraid for everyone around you. Henry Cavill's like too gentle.
But like in the end, Seraphim's kind of a pussy too because he gets the information from Acrisius, or he gets the information from Zeus, kills Acrisius, and then is still doing the bidding of Hera. And you're like, why? You got what you wanted. Like if you're going to. I get the idea as like, oh, I'm going to somehow backstab her to get a hold of the cauldron.
Well, I mean, he does that, actually.
Does that, but like, is that really what his game plan was? Like, or was that opportunity taking place? I don't get it. Ares helping Hera makes perfect sense the whole entire time. He's a whipped mama's boy.
Jason Momoa.
Yes.
Ooh, I can see that.
As Seraphim.
He's like broad shoulders. Yeah. I can see that.
Right. He big. he large boy. And I mean, he's, again, sort of silly, I think, as a person, but like, I think he could pull off scary
Khal Drogo
really well with like the pointy eyebrows that he has.
Actually, you know what I kind of want? I need to look him up. His name is Anthony Starr, but he's Homelander.
Oh.
That's not helpful to me at all.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
Where he's like in real life he's like a gentle, kind, like bubbly person.
But when he's terrifying.
He is like a complete psychopath.
That looks very doable.
That actually works really well for me.
Who else would be other fan
You still haven't found a hair on yet.
No. I continue to just want Evios to be Varric, which is not helpful, but like I just wanted his voice to change into Varric's voice like halfway through the episode and be like, you're so close. You're so close to being there.
But then like Julie pops out and like he like
get a Julie.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like, I would have said, like 10 years ago, I would have said Channing Tatum for like.
That's what I hate now is like, I am now of an age where actors that I feel like would fill these slots, I look at pictures of like the Friends reunion. And I'm like, oh my God, you're so old. What happened? Why?
Okay. What about, hear me out, Joshua Bassett, most famous for supposedly being the ex-boyfriend of Olivia Rodrigo, whose beautiful album came out recently. He's just the most generic looking 18-year-old man I've ever seen.
Love it.
So basically,
he looks a little bit like Timothée Chalamet, but better fed.
Okay.
Oh,
like Timothée Chalamet looks like he's emaciated all the time.
I see this.
So basically, we need to go to like Nickelodeon Disney stars currently.
I love Timothée Chalamet. I think he's...
Oh, I do too. But like it's
no,
the, like
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Versus tiny facial features.
He's so just... like wraith-like or something.
He looks like he's about to snap in half, like constantly.
Yes.
But I like the Chrissy point. Like for Heron, you should scoop up like a Disney star or something. Like wherever some wizards.
Well, Joshua Bassett.
Yes.
Okay.
He was the star of High School, the musical.
Okay. I was gonna say you gotta go. That's why I said Zac Efron. It's like you gotta go to like whatever the High School Musical thing they're doing right now.
Yes.
And I want Ashley Tisdale to play like Aphrodite or something for some reason.
Yes. Oh man.
What is this?
This is the monster that I always knew I needed in my life was live action gloves.
What have we done? No, let's not go there. Let's
but
not give them
like,
ideas.
This is like, again, we talked about the live action Death Note last time.
Yeah, no, I don't think we need.
We're playing with fire.
Go there.
No one needs this.
Oh, you're right.
I'm gonna have to edit out
Colin.
a lot of our conversation. As we're now approaching 3 hours, I'm like, I love that our conversation like does not want for content, but I'm also like, oh god, I gotta edit this.
No, we're only 2 hours.
Keep it secret, keep it safe.
We're only 2 hours in. We're not that crazy yet.
Only.
We can talk for another hour about this, right?
Again, my biggest mystery, I will end with this. My biggest mystery is who is Apollo sleeping with? I want to know who is specifically the guy
who isn't
in the
Apollo
lilac
sleeping with?
But I mean, like in the scene, and who is wearing the lilac robes? I want to know. Like he kept popping in, like in the "We're judging you, Zeus. You just screwed up," and he's like there in the background, like who the f- is that? I can identify just about everyone else, but who's the purple robe guy? And I hate it.
Also, love that this lover, anonymous lover of Apollo, is on sort of Hera's side of things, and yet still sleeps with. It's still like
a lot of the battle lines were interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like you mentioned Hephaestus. Like you wouldn't think he would be on Zeus's side.
Yeah.
Another goddess that isn't explicitly named, but who I'm pretty sure I've identified correctly as being Hestia. Mm-hmm. She's slightly older and has her hair kind of up with this sort of like flame-like diadem.
I thought that was Demeter, but I think you're right. I think it's Hestia.
Oh, maybe it could be. It didn't have like the.
She didn't have any
sort of grainy.
Yeah.
I would expect more obvious grain symbolism, but I was like, Hestia of all the goddesses would just be like, screw this. I am too old. Stay away from me and my hearth. Like, go away. I don't care about this.
Yeah.
You are all babies.
Well, that's what I want Aphrodite just being like things up because it's like, I'm going to make weird people fall in love with each other and see what happens.
I love it.
That would have been
We mentioned
so
that the fates like have power over Zeus, but it's very explicit in a Homeric hymn that Aphrodite has power over all the gods, Zeus included.
Yes.
Love is inescapable, and you can't.
Could we have seen a bitch fight between Hera and Aphrodite? Because like Hera's just like that whore to Electra the whole time. Like, why are you blaming Electra? She didn't even know. Like some victim blaming and stuff. It's like, why does she never go to Aphrodite and chew her out for this whole mess?
Right. Yeah. Well, why didn't Hera try one of her, she does this in the Iliad where she goes to Aphrodite and Aphrodite makes her like super sexy so that she can seduce Zeus to get Zeus like distracted so that her side of things can go according to her plans. Why didn't she try that again? Didn't she?
This is again maybe like there are certain things that we just need to accept for the plot in the show to happen. But like my reading was like, in what world would any person in their mind cheat on this Hera.
Yeah.
Right? She's terrifying.
What does Poseidon say? Or like Zeus says, like, only a fool would trust her. And Poseidon started, I was like, no, only a fool would
make her
anger
mad.
Yeah, would like piss her
anger
off.
her.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, this woman is intense.
Which also, I didn't mention it, but I need to like make it into a GIF and put it somewhere in the show. My favorite shot all time is the beginning of maybe it's the last or the second last episode, but when Poseidon, like when Hera promises the sea to the giants, and Poseidon's just watching, and he like slowly dips below, and it's like Poseidon out.
And Zeus calls it too.
So
Like,
good.
she was gonna screw you over, wasn't she? And he's like, shut up.
Yes.
Like, it was such a brother moment.
Yeah. And we know that Poseidon's like, I love fish. Like, I love the sea.
Oh, speaking of the sea and fish, I had this moment. So when they're on the galleys and Zeus is like, I'm going to get really like double down on my involvement. And he shoots lightning down.
Oh, he
and,
shoots like 10,000 lightning down.
Right. And I was like, how did that not electrocute all of the humans in the water? Like there are people in the water all around that lightning strike.
Yep.
And I was so curious that I went and looked it up and it would have. And then I was like, oh, well, whatever. It's magic. Like, it's a god.
But then later...
And then he and Poseidon team up to do the exact same thing. He electrocutes a bunch of the giants by lightning bolting water. And I was like, you can't have it both ways, my friends.
I mean, you can. He is the god of lightning, so he just has very minute control over it. Kept it to the ship, which is not a conductor.
There has to be rules. He cannot. But he does shoot the water eventually. Yeah. Like, because there's the scene where they're all, like, floating around, and he's like, I'm going to have a little temper tantrum. Mm-hmm. And, like, it's very cool. It's visually amazing with these, like, big bubbles of steam eruptions happening. But I was just like, you just killed everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I'm going to...
Anyway, just things Zoe thinks about.
My biggest takeaway is, like, I think the writers really need to get some women in there to help. Like, they've done some good stuff with a lot of the characters, and it's just like those moments of like the he said she said moment. Like, someone could have called that out pretty easily. Mm-hmm. And you,
how many women? Sorry, go ahead, Christy.
I was just gonna say, you have the potential to like that was always my thing with Hera and Zeus as the representative like married couple, is just women worshipped Hera for marriage. Realistically, men were telling these stories in the past. What were the women saying? And we can imagine these myths. Like, that's what I loved about this premise, was like, this is another myth that didn't get written down. All right, let's make it more nuanced then. What were the women telling about their gods and goddesses? How are they representing those relationships? Get that version in, because it was never written down. So that's my ultimate takeaway in the end.
Right.
To answer your question, the production, the writing, the directing, like the creative, I think, decisions is predominantly men. And I think it shows.
Yeah. Like, how many women have to die and or suffer in order to promote or sort of move along the man pain in this show is kind of the end goal of the show of, like, how many women can we harm, whether intentional or not, how many women can we harm in order to make the plot go forward? Is really how it comes down at the end of it all. So
you're right, yeah.
I mean, like, you got the obvious with like Electra and Hera, but like it was specifically when the parallels between Heron and Seraphim, and Heron was like, "Oh, I know your pain, brother," and it was like both of our mother figures were brutally, horribly murdered in front of our eyes, and it's just like...
Except Seraphim was his mother and his aunt in that case, just for good measure.
Yeah. Or like it manifests, I think, also in the sense that like how much sort of FaceTime we get with Apollo. Mm-hmm. When Artemis is there, one would think that she would sort of be also like, she is also, as much as like Hermes and Apollo are fellow bastard children of Zeus to Heron, so is Artemis.
Exactly. Yeah.
And she's an archer, so if Heron's doing archery training, so is Apollo, but like Apollo's on his chariot the whole time. Throw her in. Like, show her investment in a sibling relationship.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she's very, I mean, her characterization, I mean, she's beautiful, but like, she's not very Artemis.
Well, she's
she's in this like sort of tight, she's in this sort of like tight dress thing. And it was kind of, like, is that really how Artemis, famous like virgin goddess who would slaughter men for seeing her naked, would actually have dressed.
Athena seemed underwhelming in that same regard. Like Athena, the woman born into armor. And I will say I appreciate that all the women had real armor going for them, at least. Unlike how you could portray that. But still, like, there was nothing about Athena. Like, I knew it was Athena because she was hanging out with Ares all the time, interestingly enough.
Yeah,
I don't see like Artemis actually hanging out with Aphrodite, and I guess it's Hestia, right? When they're like sitting watching.
I think it's Hestia.
There's also, I think, a bit of conflation. Like, I think Apollo gets conflated with Helios a little bit. I think they're doing a little bit the same with...
And you see Artemis Selene, as
the moon. And there's like the sun-moon sort of conflation, which is not necessarily always the case.
Right.
But, you know, next season, I'm hoping that women get a little bit more...
We're just gonna we can just use this, be like, because we know for a fact that Charlie and Vlas are listening to us as we speak.
Yes, our good friends Charlie and Vlas. Hello, welcome to the show.
We're on first name bases.
You're on the right track, guys. You're doing great. There's some improvements. Please.
But I was gonna say, but like low-key hit us up and also like get in touch with Zoe, Christy, and Eli. And I don't, they're based in Austin. We're in Austin.
It's true.
That's true.
It's true.
Christy's not, but
I'll zoom in.
It's fine. That's the glory of the internet, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I will say one last comment. Seraphim is not much to look at, but I could listen to him talk all day long. I don't know how they did Seraphim's voice, but it is spectacular.
I do know this. They were talking about, so when they did the recording, what they did for the demons is they basically had the actor, they spoke in they read the lines in like a normal voice, and then they read the lines in like I'm a demon voice, like that, and then they doubled them over each other. The idea being like they're part human, part demon, so you hear both, so there's two voices basically. But then they also specifically mentioned that actor,
Elias
Tufexis.
Tufexis?
Yeah, Elias Tufexis. So that actor is actually able to do like some kind of double throat thing where he like lowers his voice and like gets like that seraphim voice, which is like, so basically I'm describing it wrong. That actor was able to just kind of do a voice like that. And then they decided for the rest of the demons to basically do that doubling thing where they had like the regular human voice and then your low voice. And then they layered them over each other to give the demons that effect. And then they did it again with Elias Tufexis. So that's why he has that almost like double throat kind of thing going on.
That's wild.
He apparently was also the voice actor for Leonidas and Nikolaos in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. As well as was from a couple previous Assassin's Creed games. Mr. Tufexis, wherever you are, you're doing great work. Anyway.
Oh man,
okay,
you guys, this was so much fun. Thank you.
This is our far and above our longest episode.
We had so many thoughts.
2 hours and 10 minutes.
Holy shit.
That is like almost an hour longer than like our longest one, to my knowledge, from editing this. Just like raw audio recording was our first part 1, which was like just shy of an hour 30. Most of them we usually tap out a little after an hour, like between an hour and 10. Mm-hmm. This one we went 2 hours and 10 minutes.
They gave us so much material. Like,
no, this is
they
great.
Really did.
We need to have everyone back because you're great guests, and this has been good.
Yes, please. Come back and talk to us.
When it's just Eli and I, it's like not as interesting.
I know, we just stare at each other.
I like listening to you guys. Although I like that you have guests too. Like that's been fun. So it's fun to be a part of that. It's fun to see who else you guys get. So.
So yeah, thank you, Zoe. Thank you, Zoe. I can't. Thank you, Zoe and Christy, so much for helping us out. It was wonderful to have you.
Colin's about to cry over here.
I'm breaking down hard. This is the longest recording session that and I'm crying for my future self who's going to edit this sometime in the next week. But like I said, yeah, thank you so much. We had you before, but again, is there anything you want to plug, or where can people find you on the internet?
Hasn't changed from last time. I'm at CM Vogue for Twitter, and then dr.c.vogler for Instagram. And just to go off on women in mythology, there's a great book by Jess Zimmerman called Women and Other Monsters, Building a New Mythology. So if you kind of want a hot feminist take on Greek myth, that was a really fun book to read. So that's my plug for the day.
I am not currently available on social media, so you can't find me anywhere except in Austin, Texas in my office. So sorry to all of you faraway listeners. In terms of other media to plug, I just watched Psycho last night for the first time, and it's distinctly not a feminist piece whatsoever, but it is very interesting, and I had never seen it before, and I highly recommend it if you have never seen Psycho or if you haven't watched it in a while. It is very good, very scary. I have never been so stressed in my entire life.
Thank you guys again. You have to come back.
Yeah, no, we definitely need to have you. We should consider extending permanent invites for just make them, elevate them from guest to host, because this was fantastic.
Yeah.
Zoe made a face.
I'm here for it until school starts again, so let me know.
You and me both.
Yeah. Anytime. This was a pleasure.
All right.
Yay.
Well, thank you again. As usual, you can find us at movieswedig.com. Follow us at digmovies on Twitter. Listen, like, review, subscribe, all that stuff. It really helps us for trying to build our follower base. And until next time, just keep listening, and we'll hear from you again. So yeah, bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye. You know who really needs the Medica attention is Heron after his face got stabbed into with Seraphim's talons.
I wrote that down, but getting the fish hooked.
I said that out loud. I was like, how is his face not off of his skull? What?
But also A+ pivot, Zoe.
Side note, that also kind of works with that. I don't know if you guys caught it, because I was really starting to pay attention to some of the other gods who weren't, didn't have a huge presence, because I was looking for Dionysus. I'm slightly depressed in how he's depicted, but I saw him in the Gigantomachy Part 2, and the way he fights is he swallows a bunch of wine and spits in people's faces. And
I saw that!
Yes.
So good.
I rewound it.
And does it melt them or something? I forget what happens.
It just spit in his face. It did nothing.
It's like all of this epic fighting going on all around him, and just
where's the Thyrsus? Come on.
Can you imagine him just whipping people with a little Thyrsus?
Last thing, assignment that I used to do at University of Iowa, the final assignment was they had to rewrite the Bacchae. And I had a student who mixed up the word Thyrsus with phallus. And it was a female student who was very straight-laced, and she's just commenting on how Dionysus and his cousin end up in a fight with their phalluses. I was just like, I don't think this word means what you think it means, but that was a beautiful
I remember.
image in my head.
Oh my god, it's going really terribly wrong.
Or did it go terribly right?
Favorite remake ever. Yes.
Oh my god.
That is how Dionysus... Apparently, the writers didn't get the note that he should not be spitting wine in people's faces. He should be whipping out his phallus and just going to town. So.
Yep. Just have
just for that one shot, the show gets bumped to an MC-17.
Well, they kept saying, so I was looking, because Netflix has the little oh, here's the ratings of this show, and it kept saying gore, violence, nudity, and I was like, where is the nudity? There are no tits. There's only the one giant.
Well, there are on the
There's
monsters.
The one giant. Oh, there's two. Which is the second one?
So there's one that has a row of tits,
like
that
the snake
one
goddess.
Yeah, or something, and it's there's 5 of them, and then the other one just has
Artemis
normal
of
too.
Ephesus one.
Yes,
with
that's
the
what
many,
it was.
The
Artemis of Ephesus. Yes.
Many-breasted. Okay, sure, but monster titties aside.
Should we introduce the show?
Oh god.
We should introduce the show.
I'm sorry.
I'm getting into it.
Yeah, before we get too far into the weeds.
Too far into the boobs, please.
Yeah. Once we open that box.
Yeah, I feel like it's gonna be hard to get the boobs back in the box.
It's gonna be hard to get me out of the box. Sorry.